The Small and Medium Enterprises Association Malaysia has cautioned that the United States' 25% tariff on Malaysian exports could have a devastating impact on small businesses. Here to explain the implications is Samenta's National President, Datuk William Ng.
I think the impact on SMEs, especially those who are export-oriented, will be quite serious given this new tariff. We must remember that the US is our third largest trading partner, so a 25% tariff, to us is the equivalent of an economic earthquake, especially for businesses that depend on the US as the final destination. We must also remember that many of our SMEs already operate on a very thin margin, and this tariff will almost immediately render our goods less competitive vis-a-vis countries with lower tariffs, such as, of course, Vietnam. But then our concern is not just export. We're also worried about jobs. We're worried about production capacity. We're also worried about investor confidence moving forward in Malaysia as a investment destination. I think as exports slow down, we'll also see ripple effect across our domestic economy. I think it's quite important, especially in services like logistics, hospitality and retail. So it's not just the exporters and the manufacturers that will be impacted. The whole economy will be impacted in one way or another. There are some people who are already saying, don't worry, because tariff will hurt US consumers more than us, because ultimately they are the one who absorb it. But this is not a zero-sum game. If the US consumers are hit, business confidence and of course consumption across the world will also be impacted.
William also called on the government to fast-track support for SMEs to help them build resilience against future economic shocks.
I think what has been announced earlier in April, right after the first announcement, things like SJPP, things like soft loan, things like getting money for Matrade to help SMEs to pivot to other market. I think all these are useful. And in fact, this was drawn with in consultation with industry. So obviously, we are supportive of it, and it should go on. But we should disperse them as soon as possible to help the SMEs overcome this issue. But I think what is equally important is that this support shouldn't be limited to exporters alone, because as I've said earlier, the issue here is not just exporters. Domestic SMEs will also face second-order impacts from the weaker demand of our products. So we are urging the government, if possible at all, to pause any planned cost increment, including, of course, the planned petrol subsidy rationalization, until at least the situation stabilizes and we know what kind of damage or how much damage is done and whether or not then we can absorb it. I think what we want is also to recommend incentives to basically boost local demand. For example, you give more rebate, you have a more Buy Malaysian products campaign and so on to support our economy and the domestic players. I think the longer term, grants for automation and digitalization, I think obviously will help our SMEs to be resilient. And I think this, regardless of the impact of tariff, we will need to make sure that our SMEs are ready for any future eventuality.